Good morning. I will call this meeting to order for the Santa Cruz Libraries Facility Financing Authority, 9 a.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Goldstein, City of Capitola.
Here.
Vice Chair Bernal, City of Santa Cruz.
Here.
Susan Mariello, County, Santa Cruz County.
Here.
And Chuck Comstock, City of Scotts Valley.
Here. All right. So for the Libraries Facility Financing Authority, the LFFA, do we have any additional material?
We do. At the board's request, we've handed out the LFFA contract summary. If you'll get it, you'll see that the highlighted areas represent calendar year 2014 onward in terms of contract commitments. This is just for your information. And there's copies available on the table behind me for anybody else who would like to see a copy of that.
Okay, thank you.
So just a question of clarification. This is the contract survey for the current fiscal year?
No.
No, for the new fiscal year?
No.
No.
These are the historic contracts from calendar year 2014 forward.
Okay.
And it's provided within the context if we look for reimbursement. These are possible areas for reimbursement to the library JPA for services rendered for the development of the LFFA and the election.
Okay, so the total is $227,000 for Bregman, NBS, and TBWB over the course of the years that they've worked on Measure S.
From 2014. There are prior contracts prior to that, but
they were paid already.
yeah, they're paid, and I would not offer those for consideration in terms of reimbursement.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are there any changes to this morning's agenda? Seeing none, we will go to oral communication. If anyone wishes to address the LFFA board on any item that's not on today's agenda. Seeing none, I will close the public comment and turn to our executive director report. Mr. Hill.
Yes, the report is provided for you. If you have any questions, I am here to answer them, but I have no amendments to make to that report.
Okay, so in that we see our schedule for the coming months. Obviously, the election coming up next week is an important date, and pending the results of that, that will affect, obviously, the schedule moving forward for the election.
Well, that's correct. And today, in relation to that election, you'll be doing the first reading of the special tax ordinance. And the ordinance is constructed to be approved subject to a successful election. And then the second reading is scheduled for the regular meeting on July 28th.
Okay. So everyone has that on their calendar for 7/28, which will be our second reading after the successful conclusion of the election coming up next week. All right. So that takes us to our consent calendar.
Mr. Chairman. May I address item 5?
We don't usually take public comment on the executive director report, but I will accept public comment in this case. Yes, 2 minutes.
Thanks. It seems to be about the month of activities for the month of February. And the status report reminds me of status reports that I used to write where I would say, Sam received lots of emails about Project L, just like the month before and the month before that.
Okay.
Is there a question?
It says it's for activities for the month of February.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Oh, rather than March. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comment noted.
Appreciate the correction.
Sure. Takes us to the consent calendar, consideration of the minutes for the May 5th meeting. Is there any discussion, Mr. Pullitt, or a motion? Seeing none, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I made all the motions at the last meeting. I'm gonna stay quiet.
Okay. The motion carries unanimously. So that takes us to our general business, which is this ordinance that was mentioned in the executive director's report, an ordinance levying special taxes, found on page 8 and through 12. Is there a roll for staff report, please?
Yes, there is. This ordinance is required should the election be successful, and we want to properly assess the taxes going forward. The calendar is such that it's necessary to put this matter on the agendas just before the election so that we can meet the statutory deadlines for regular meetings, the reading and the implementation of the ordinance. So the ordinance is properly constructed to anticipate the election. Should the election be successful, then we can go on to the second reading of this special tax ordinance on July 28th at a regular meeting. Should the election not be successful, then there's no second reading, no harm done, and the ordinance is not enacted. The ordinance reflects the resolutions adopted by this board at prior meetings, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So at the county, we oftentimes, well, we always include a signature for the county attorney in the ordinance, and I think that's a good practice. This is the first time we're having an ordinance before this body, and there's no place for the attorney to sign. I assume, was this prepared by our outside counsel?
It was.
Jones Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would ask that the board have Jones Hall sign off on this document as meeting the legal requirements that Rich is telling us about, and plan to do so in the future for any other ordinances or resolutions that we may bring before this board, if that would be agreeable.
Seems to make sense. I assume that can be done for a second reading.
Yes, it is. So essentially, the first reading is the correction of the ordinance. The second reading will, of course, have that reflected in the ordinance.
All right. Are there any other questions by the board? Seeing none, look for public comment on the ordinance, first reading of this ordinance. Yes.
Thanks.
Would you please step right here? Thank you.
Bruce Holloway. I could tell by reading the very first paragraph that this did not come from ABC Law. It doesn't have their characteristically turgid prose. It doesn't have words like here and after or there too. The other thing I noticed about it is that there's no paragraph with a waiver of conflict of interest. And I agree with that. I think that's a good thing. And I'm going to compare that to another thing on the next agenda. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to address the board regarding this first reading of the ordinance? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion and potential action.
So I would move approval of the recommendation by our director, interim executive director, to approve the ordinance levying special taxes as presented, with a request that Jones Hall be asked to sign the ordinance as to form and legal sufficiency.
And so this will be the first reading of the ordinance.
Yeah, so I'm at this point approving the first reading of the ordinance, directing you to place it on our January 28th agenda for its final reading, with the inclusion of the signature by Jones Hall as to form and sufficiency.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Okay, call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that takes us to the conclusion of this meeting.
Excuse me, I would like to amend some prior comments that I made with regards to the handout. The highlighted areas reflect the 2014 calendar year onward contract commitments, but above each of those areas, you'll see expenditures from years 2008 and so on. Bregman is probably the best example of that. So you have 2008, 2013 expenditures. I've just highlighted the 2014 onward expenditures as those that probably staff would recommend consideration for reimbursement should the election be successful. So I was incomplete in my explanation.
And this is not on today's agenda,
It
it's
is
just
not.
an additional informational item at
This
this point.
was requested by the board.
Right.
And so it was in my
Yeah.
file when it was printed out.
I think this is something we could talk about a little bit when we get to the budget for the library JPA, because we had talked about, what was the potential reimbursement. This is, I think, information that can be useful in that regard. So thank you. All right, so with that, we will adjourn the LFFA meeting, and we will, what's the word, reconvene, got it right this time, now as the Santa Cruz City County Libraries Joint Powers Authority Board. And in this case, I will note that the same members are present, and we will move to presentations by the county with Nicole Coburn. Nicole,
Good morning.
good morning.
So at our last board meeting, we presented some of the plans to the supervisors in regards to the Felton Branch Library, and we thought we would bring the same presentation to you since you may have not seen some of the various conceptual drawings and some of the other things we have in the works. So this is the current Felton Branch Library. It's housed in a approximately 1,200 square foot memorial building, a church that was built in 1893. It's on the corner of Felton Empire and Gushy in Felton. It's quite small. It lacks numerous things, one of which being parking, access for disabled patrons, homework areas, meeting and other rooms, and shelving for collections, and also modern technology. It could use some new wiring and equipment to provide for modern day library needs. It provides very limited space for programs, so compared to some of the other branches, you'll see very few things happening there, although they try to accommodate the best they can. So this is a little bit about the area served by the branch. There are about 16,000 residents in the San Lorenzo area that we believe would use the Felton Library. This includes Felton, Ben Lomond, Lompico, Mount Herman, Zianti, and parts of Bonnie Dan. It's very close to downtown Felton. You can walk from downtown Felton, so it has easy access. It's about less than 1 mile from the San Lorenzo Valley Unified School District K-12 campus. That campus has over 2,000 students, and it includes students from all over the area. There are no after-school recreational opportunities for children in Ben Lomond or Felton, so this library would help serve that purpose. A full-service library is really important for the growing senior population as well. This shows some of the major events that have occurred over the years. This project has been happening for over a 10-year period. The Verdi family initially offered the property in 2002 for the new Felton Library next to the post office. There have been various task forces and community meetings that have been held on the branch. We've worked with architect Teal Messer to design a new building. And then most recently, we established the Library Facilities Financing Authority. And last year, the county acquired the 2-acre parcel from the Verdi family. Initially, the Verdis were offering part of the parcel, but we've actually have the whole parcel now. So we're planning both a library building and an outdoor classroom area, as you'll see. This is an aerial photo of the whole site. So to the west side, the property is located on the west side of Gushy Street between Hine and Kirby Streets in Felton. The post office is to the left of the photo, which it might be kind of difficult to see. The top of the photo there is the San Lorenzo Valley Water District property, and then there's some residential area to the right of that photo. The Water District has granted us an easement at the top from Kirby Street to access the backside of the property, which will be important for emergency and other access. So the site contains 3 major components. One is the library area and parking area to the left. The middle is a riparian area where we envision doing some restoration and working with parks and environmental groups and other community groups to restore that area. And then the third area is the nature explorer area, which is closest to the water district, and that will be an outdoor classroom with various elements. So the new 21st Century Library, Teal, this is one of his drawings. It's an approximately 9,300 square foot building. There's a children's area envisioned, a teen room, a reading room, a meeting or flexible room, a staff work room, parking for a van, and we envision it being energy efficient and having modern electrical systems. The service model has changed since the library was designed, so the interior might need to be updated, but he designed it in a way where it's very flexible, so we can change the layout inside any which way to accommodate the current service model. This is a picture of the outside. We feel, even though this was drawn several years ago, we feel it's really a timeless picture of the library. We think it still applies to the Felton area and will fit in very nicely. So that third area I had mentioned, the Creekside area, we have big plans for that area, including the outdoor classroom. There are various themes that we kind of envision applying in this area. One is nature, a second is water, and a third is sustainability. Some of the things we'd like to do back there are some restoration projects, a native plant demonstration garden, restoring the riparian walkway along Bull Creek, some theme gardens and seedlitting, and then the nature explorer area, which we'll be partnering with the library on. These are some pictures of some of those ideas. So you can see on the left is how native plant gardens have been applied at another library and then another park. The middle shows just how a riparian walkway might look. And then to the right, theme gardens. I believe the picture at the top has a theme garden relating to pizza, where they're planting different plants in the different areas of that circular area related to making pizza, so kids are learning how to grow things that they can then cook. Here are some pictures of a seed lending library, which we'd also like to have up at the New Fountain branch, as well as the Nature Explorer area. This seed lending library, I believe, is at the Richmond Public Library, and then this Nature Explorer photos are from the Anythink Library System in Colorado, which have actually implemented these Nature Explorer outdoor spaces at 3 of their 7 branches. I just want to add that Nature Explorer is a nonprofit that's run through the Arbor Day Foundation and the Dimensions Educational Research Foundation, and their mission is to really transform children's lives through meaning daily connections with nature. In April, the Felton Library Friends brought together county staff, San Lorenzo Valley Water District staff, and others to meet with consultants from Nature Explorer. The library was there too, Janice was there, as well as our Parks Department. And we were there to help visualize the outdoor space. And so Nature Explorer heard everything that was said and came back with this conceptual drawing of the outdoor space. Children visiting the library, in addition to just checking out books, would have an outdoor space to create nature art, build, dig, read, play music, and engage in dramatic play. This would really allow them to explore nature and to gain a good appreciation of the natural world. So the next steps that we have are to continue our partnerships with different groups in the San Lorenzo Valley area, as well as through the county and school district, service organizations, and others who are interested in helping develop the Creekside Zone. Our Director of Capital Projects, Betsy Lindberg, who will be engaging with the library pretty actively, should measure as passed, is working with Teal. He's going to be shepherding this project through our development permit application, which we hope to start that this summer. And that process will probably be a 10-month to year process by the time we can update all the studies that are necessary and then get the permit to start construction. So we hope to begin that and actively be working on that. And then also with our new Director of Library, Susan Nemitz, coming on board later this month, we're going to be working with her to update any plans related to the building itself that are needed as part of this development application. So we look forward to seeing what happens with Measure S next week, and it'll help us develop our timeline for moving forward. And we need to start construction either 5 years from the date that Measure S passes or 6 years from the date that we acquired the property from the Rudy family. So at the very latest, we have to start construction by August of 2021. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
What happens if you don't start construction within those timelines?
The property, based on the agreement that we have with the Rudy family, the property would revert back to them.
All right. Are there any other questions? I think it's neat to see the progress in Felton. Capitola and Felton can be the first libraries to start construction. We'll be racing to see who can get started first, Susan. So,
I got a sandwich bet on it.
all right. I'll notch that sandwich and raise you a soda.
Okay, you got it.
All
I'll
right.
take it.
Okay, well, thank you, Nicole. So that takes us to, where are we here? Make sure I'm on the right agenda. These additional materials. So I think we do have additional material.
Yeah, there is a 16-page packet that was prepared by the City of Santa Cruz Finance Director that has been distributed, and there are copies available here for members of the public if you would like to look at.
Okay, and does that completely replace the 14-page packet that previously we'd received?
Yes.
Marcus? Okay, so
Yes.
this one I can get rid of.
And my understanding is they're the same except for the addition of the last 2 pages.
Yeah, the four-month proposed budget. Okay, thank you, Marcus. And it looks like we also received some additional material related to the Felton branch. And also some photographs.
Photographs of the bookmobile.
Yeah,
doesn't
I will
look like
be
a
talking
bookmobile.
about that in my,
Oh, okay.
in my report.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
And then I would also like to acknowledge receipt of the document that our director handed out for the LFFA so that we can properly discuss it here as well.
All right. Okay, so that's the additional material we have. Are there any changes to this morning's agenda? Seeing none, we'll turn to oral comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on any items in the library's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Seeing none, I will close the public comment and turn to a report by our interim library director.
Okay.
Mr. O'Driscoll.
Yeah, that O is important, we're sensitive.
Yeah, I gotta get that one in there.
I distributed some photographs and some renderings, and there are copies available for anyone who hasn't seen them. I'll talk about the bookmobile first. This is the rendering that we started with that you see, and by gosh, these are photographs of the actual vehicle. We sent our bookmobile staff out to Colorado to do the final inspection and the punch list for the vehicle, and went through. They took an entire day. There were 14 pages of specs. They took everything apart and tried it out. We even got to try out the, if you'll notice in the photograph here, there is an awning that is built to retract if the wind is too high or the rain is too hard, and it started raining while they were looking at it, and it did retract just as they hoped it would. So that was a test that we weren't expecting, but did work. The punch list is very short. I just heard this morning before I came to this meeting that we might actually see it in Santa Cruz County at the end of next week. And then there will be a shakedown for it, and before we can get it on the road, but it will definitely be on the road by the end of June or the 1st of July, assuming it does come when we think it's going to come. It will be at the Festival of the Brook on July 31st in Harvey West Park. if people want to see it. It has its own home in the courtyard, in the Santa Cruz City courtyard, and so it has a place to go. And the structure for it is actually being built right now, and that's going to take 5 days to build. So that is that, and that is very exciting. We're all going to be really happy to see that.
Couple of questions.
Yes.
How much did the bookmobile cost us?
The whole entire bookmobile budget was $200,000, and that included the bookmobile and I don't know what you call that, the awning over the parking spot where it will park, and it included hiring a bookmobile consultant who saw it through the entire process.
And what happens to the old bookmobile?
We will sell it. We actually have interest by one library in Northern California, but we're going to get this in town, and then we're going to pursue that, and then we're going to have mechanics go through the current bookmobile so that we can be very honest and say to that library system, we've taken very good care of it, and the mechanics of the courtyard have been very good and taken really good care of it, but there are things, it's 18 years old. So we want to be able to make an honest statement, and then we'll see if they're interested in it. And then if they're not, then it would go to auction.
One thought is that given the pending construction of a couple libraries, it could make sense to hold on to that for a few years just to see what,
that's true.
It's a possibility that in Capitola we're going to be without a library for potentially an 18-month construction period, and having a non-mobile bookmobile, oxymoron.
Well, that's something we could consider.
Just something to think about before we get too far down the path.
We haven't made any commitments to anybody about it.
Because we have talked, I have received concerns, and we have talked a bit about what we're going to do in the interim during construction, and whether it's a bookmobile that's parked in Capitola, that's an option.
Bring back the Phoenix tents.
Yeah, the portables in the parking lot, which we did after the flood.
Well, I think something, really temporary, and again, I think it's a great idea that we could evaluate, but if someone could make good use out of it, I'd love to see it go to a...
Yeah, I think we should...
Well, we can look at everything that develops, and you can make the best decision based on that.
Okay. And is this the stripped down model of the bookmobile? The next part, okay.
This is right.
Perfect segue.
That's for Capitola.
We'll put that in your parking lot. There you go.
Thank you. As long as I get to ride it.
And it's an ADA width, so it'll fit a lot of places.
Oh, good.
This is Kermit. This is our new bike-mobile. It just arrived about 10 days ago. The spokesman, the bike shop in town, helped us pick the right bicycle for this. And then there's actually a company that builds various and sundry trailers for bicycles, and they built this for us. And now what we're actually, we've had it on the street. We rode it up Pacific Avenue, so it does work. So now what we're doing is training the staff, because it is a little trickier to pull something like this. But we do intend to deliver real bookmobile service from it. We'll have a laptop. You can sign up for a library card. You can return books. You can check out books. You can look for things that are going to deliver service out of it. It can go places that the bookmobile won't fit. And within the city of Santa Cruz, for example, this bookmobile and the one we have now can't fit at the tannery. But we could take this over to the tannery and give service. We can ride on open streets. It is light. It fits into our library vehicles, so we could go to Capitola, we can go to Scotts Valley, we can go anywhere in the incorporated area and pull it out and provide service and participate in events with it. So we have a line of staff who want to ride it, and other people in the community who want to ride. It has 21 speeds, so I think we're going to be okay in most places. But we're testing it out right now. That's Kermit.
Well, if you need any board members to volunteer to ride it,
I'll remember that.
Janice, what's the technology like inside this big room?
Oh, it's so exciting.
It's got to be amazing.
It is amazing. It is built, it is wired in the walls to be its own hotspot. So that's the thing we're really excited about. It will have, in every branch we have a digital sign. It will have a smaller digital sign so that people coming in will be able to see the same marketing of events and programs and services that people at the branches will see. We have solar panels on the roof that will run the generator. We have sun tubes in the roof that will provide extra lighting. You can see from that photograph. We worked really hard on the colors on the inside to make it as light as we possibly could. It has an accessible lift at the end of it, so people who need that kind of assistance will be able to get onto the bookmobile. Yeah, it's
Looks
the
awesome.
latest
It's
and
going to be
greatest.
standalone
Yeah,
Wi-Fi system.
yes, yeah, it's very exciting.
Neat.
And then just to actually move from that, we're recognizing Cesar and Danny in the staff recognition. And they're actually the ones who are building the canopy for the bookmobile. Right now, they do all kinds of things. They go all the way from something fun like that to they clean up all outside the branches in the mornings. There are people who leave evidence of their being there and camping, and the branches have to be cleaned every morning. Unfortunately, that's one of the other jobs that they have to do. But everything that we ask them to do, they do, and do at the top level. And we are so lucky to have Daniel and Cesar and Ken, who was not listed in this particular recognition, is also part of the team.
All right.
All right, thank you to them.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to the report by Friends of the Santa Cruz Public Library.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kate Callis with Santa Cruz Friends of the Public Library. Since January of this year, we have devoted a majority of our work and our resources with Janice's support to the Measure S campaign, which has unfortunately made that we could not provide as many services to the library itself, but Janice was willing for us to do that. So now our focus will turn to restoring our own fiscal health, and in that regard, we raised almost $12,000 at the spring book sale. In addition, the library Friends branches are supporting the summer reading program for students. So we have been able to make a contribution in that regard, but most of our efforts have gone toward Measure S. Also, unfortunately, our director has resigned to take a job with the Santa Cruz Symphony, so we will be in active recruitment to find someone to lead us into this whole new exciting area when Measure S passes. And that's pretty much what we've been up to. We do have a variety of used book sales coming up, but rather than give people all these dates that they won't remember, I suggest that if someone is interested in the sales that the branches are putting on, you could check the Friends website where they are all listed. Okay, thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about the recruitment for the new executive director. Are you actively advertising at this point, or are you?
We have not begun that process yet, but we have talked to people in the library system, and we have reached out to the community. Cynthia Matthews is helping with that process. So we are hoping to advertise widely and look for someone with a lot of energy and a love of libraries, because we are not the highest paying group in the county. So we need someone who loves us as we love the library. If anybody has a suggestion, we're really looking to all parts of the community to give us names and suggestions of people who might be interested.
And I think you're working with the Community Foundation as well.
As well, thank you.
Thanks for the update. What's that?
I just would like to express my appreciation to the Friends. I know this has been a very difficult time with all the activities that are going on with Measure S. I really think you guys have done an awesome job to support the Measure S folks and to support our library systems as a whole. So I hope on behalf of the whole board you'll express our appreciation to all of your your colleagues that work on the Friends Group and thank them so much for all their contributions.
I will do that, but truly for the Friends groups, it's a labor of love.
All right. We're so happy about that.
And I think if there's anything that our various jurisdictions can do to help get the word out about your executive director recruitment, please just let us know.
We would truly appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've had a wonderful time with Cordelia, but now we need, to have someone else who can come and take us in hand.
Of course. Great. Well, thank you for the update. Okay, are there any comments by any individual board members? All right. Seeing none, I will turn to the consent calendar. It looks like we have items A through I here. Any questions or board members who wish to pull any items from consent? Any member from the public who would like to pull any of the items from consent?
I'd just like to address item F1, please.
F1. Okay. Why don't we take the rest of the consent first, and then we'll come back and do that before we do the budget. So I do have actually one just quick question on the performance reports. I noticed that system-wide measurements of virtual access were slightly down, and then also the self-check numbers were slightly down. I'm just curious, is that a trend? I would sort of anticipate that those numbers would be kind of on a steady increase rather than
Well,
really a decrease.
I wouldn't call it a trend. I think it's within the realm of normal,
Okay.
depending on what's going on, what's happening in the county, or what was going on that particular month. It's not a worrying thing for us
Okay.
at this moment.
But we're not seeing sort of explosive growth in the virtual checkouts or anything like that.
Nothing explosive, but it's steady and consistent.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And I have just one question, because I noted we did not get a page replacement. I think the signature page on one of the agreements in F should be amended. Nicole, can you?
We can take F after we do the rest of the consent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I do have that here,
Oh, okay.
and I have it for your signature afterwards, the
Okay.
updated version.
Okay. Well, let's,
Okay. Well, so we're moving the entirety of F, because he asked for F1, and I think it's actually, all right, we're just moving all of F.
we're taking all of F. So
Okay,
right now,
thank
I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar without item F.
So moved.
Second.
Second by
Martine.
Martine.
He beat me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that will take us to item F. I'm going to take it before our general business. Mr. Holloway, do you have any comments, please?
Thank you. I'm just a country bumpkin, but the agreement with the city, between the library and the city, I don't see the quid pro quo in there. There's a whole bunch of services that the city's going to provide with respect to managing the new library director, and I don't see the price tag. So I don't see the other side of the agreement where the library is going to do something for the city in exchange. And I assume that ultimately what's going to happen is that the city's HR department will be managing all of the employees, including the library director. So maybe there's a later agreement that's going to be more broad. The other thing about this agreement is paragraph 8, about waiver of conflict of interest. I don't think that belongs there at all. I think you should strike it. That ought to be covered by the legal services agreement with ABC Law. I think there's already an agreement. I think there's already something in there about, I think they have agreed that they will remove or resolve any conflicts of interest that arise. The fact is that there's a history here. ABC Law did have a conflict of interest. They failed to do their duty. And I don't think there should be a pattern here where every single agreement that the library ever gets into has got some kind of a waiver where they're off the hook. There's a rule of professional conduct, 3-310 of the Bar Association. And I don't think that this blanket waiver is even going to get around that. If there is a conflict which arises, which there was when a board member was doing business with the library, and John Barrisoni knew about it. If such a conflict arises in the future, it's up to the attorney to resolve it. And I sure hope they will.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So, do we have, I see in here the Director of Libraries employment agreement. I'm not seeing the agreement between the JPA and the,
Yeah, it's at the end. And it's page 46 that needs to be replaced, so if Helga has a replacement, this would be a good time to get it.
okay.
It's right at the end of the,
Oh, it's after the compensation plan. That's
Yeah,
where I was
yeah.
struggling. Okay. Okay, so we have a replacement, page 46. So what we're looking at here is, previously at our last meeting, we approved the terms, basic terms, offered appointing Susan Nimitz as our library director. This is the follow-on contract. There's two contracts, one between Susan as the employee, the City of Santa Cruz, and this JPA board, and a second between this JPA board and the City of Santa Cruz to reimburse the City of Santa Cruz for their costs associated with that. Is that an accurate summary, Janice, of the situation? And so a replacement, page 46, I don't have it here.
she just handed it. She's just handing it out
Oh,
now.
okay. I believe it will include then signatures for the JPA board in the City of Santa Cruz,
That's correct.
right, which is,
Martini and yourself.
okay. Okay, well, that makes more sense. Okay, except for my title on this needs to be the chair of the JPA board, I think.
Right.
Okay.
And if I could just expound on one of the things you said, which was the purpose of the second agreement, it basically is not only to cover the reimbursement of the cost, but it's to provide that the city is going to be the administering entity of that agreement pursuant to the JPA. So it's a little bigger than just a reimbursement agreement.
Right. Right, I think that's correct. Are there any other comments on these two contracts that are before the board? Public comment? Seeing none, I'll...
Can I just make one comment on the conflict of interest provisions? Again, I think the reason why these have been added is to provide the maximum amount of transparency. The contract that we have with the law firm does include conflict of interest provisions in it. Those do govern the relationship between the JPA board and the firm. Again, I think the idea here was to try to provide the maximum amount of information to everybody, including Ms. Nimitz, about those provisions, because we're trying to be as open about it as we can, and so I don't think it was intended to in any way create some other rights or benefits for the firm or for the JPA or for Ms. Nimitz. It really was an informational item. So with that, I would like to take them as separate motions. I'll approve the agreement between the LJPA and the City of Santa Cruz to administer the employment contract with the directors of the library, acknowledging the receipt of the corrected page 46 and correcting the title of Mr. Goldstein to the chair of the JPA board.
Okay. There's a second by Chuck. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
And now I would approve the employment agreement with Susan Nimitz as presented.
All right. Is there a second?
Go ahead, a second.
Mr. Comstock? Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Both motions carry unanimously. Okay. So that takes us through our consent calendar and brings us to general business. The first item on general business this morning is the Library Advisory Commission update. We have a staff presentation.
I would actually like to yield to the chair of the Library Advisory Commission, Sean Campbell, who is here. The commission did consider their bylaws and they're bringing them to you today for your approval. Sean?
Good morning, I'm Sean Campbell from the Library Advisory Commission. We had two major items on our agenda May 23rd. The first was the bylaws, which are included in your packet. The bylaws were passed unanimously by our board. The second was, the same as your major issue here today, which is the budget. We were not able to come to a consensus on a motion or a recommended action, we chose to receive the report from the commission, or from the staff, but I was asked by the commission to give a summary of the general tenor of the comments, which I'd like to do. In general, we were all concerned about the continued dollar decline in the materials budget. That is a headline item for all of us, and so the commission just wanted to express general concern about that and look for strategies to mitigate that. Overall, the tenor of the discussion was very challenged by not knowing what's going to happen with Measure S. You know, the way the timing worked out with the convention of the commission and then this body, we met before we know the outcome of Measure S, and we were also not able to receive the same materials that you all have been presented with today. Staff expressed that they did not want to present us materials that your body had already seen first. And so I think that is an argument for perhaps looking at the calendar for next budget year and perhaps more closely synchronizing our meetings so that we're able to give feedback back and forth in a more timely fashion. Overall, I think the discussion of the hours was that which took the most time. There was not consensus on whether it was wise to move forward with increasing hours at this time, but all the commissioners did express an interest that we need to come together, both your board and our commission, in a creative and strategic way about how to get to the hours goal that we set. Several commissioners expressed interest in us being the body that would start that discussion. Again, it's challenging to address that issue without knowing the outcome of Measure S. Is there anything I missed, Martha?
No, I think that's pretty.
Okay. And that's a general report. Are there any questions of the board members?
Board questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your work, and I understand we're going to be having a pretty robust conversation, I think, about the budget, and as we go through different options and discuss, I think we'll be looking for feedback as well. Thank you. Okay. So with that, I think there's a recommendation here to approve the bylaws as submitted for the Library Commission. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the bylaws.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes. Public comment prior to voting. We have a motion and a second and public comment. Thank you.
I think these bylaws could be streamlined a little bit. I'm trying to find it in the book. Can anybody tell me what page?
Start on 64.
Okay. This section 1 has a paragraph with here and after, and it's kind of overselling because the words Library Advisory Commission appear at least 4 times throughout the rest of this, so I think it could be streamlined by just referring to it as the Commission. In section 2, there's this long phrase beginning with section 5B of the Fourth Amendment, blah, 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 something about library services, and then that same lengthy phraseology is in the next paragraph, which repeats the same stuff with some things left out and something added here about any amendments there too. So I think the first time this long string of words is mentioned, I think, beginning with section 5B of the Fourth Amendment and then going through library services and any amendments there too, I think the whole ball of wax should just be referred to as the agreement. And then throughout the rest of this, you can just call it the agreement, and you don't have to get into section 5B of the Fourth Amendment. Article 3 about membership, I think this entire article should be struck. This is in the Joint Powers Agreement, and it doesn't even say in Article 3 that it comes from section 5B of the Fourth Amendment, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a problem here, which is when you put the exact same verbiage in 2 different places, later on, somebody's going to come along and they're going to think, oh, here's where we can change the qualifications of Library Commission members. They're not going to realize, if they see it here, that it's really in the Joint Powers Agreement. And the history is that that's exactly what happened with the old library board and the old joint powers agreement. I could go over the bylaws, it would take me more than 3 minutes. But once they were separated this way, they evolved separately, and they weren't consistent. So please strike Article 3. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other public comment on this item? So seeing none, I know we have a motion on the floor to approve in a second, and we just received some public comments and some suggestions to streamline. Is there any discussion by board members?
So, just as a matter of construction, if you look at the authority under Section 2, it says that the commission is established pursuant to the agreement. So arguably, if the agreement changes, it would be incumbent upon the commission to amend their bylaws accordingly. I'm always into streamlining, but this is the work that came from the committee, and I think it's acceptable the way that it is. And I know that, these things do happen where the statutory construction changes over time, but I think the idea is to try to provide the public with an understanding of what the requirements are without having to go to 72 different documents. Is that about right, Sean?
Can I just add one more thing? In the paragraph about removal,
Bruce, please from here.
the word shall is in that paragraph about removal. Because it's an advisory commission, I don't think there's really any shall. That would be entirely up to the jurisdiction that sent the member. The commission has nothing to do with appointing members of the commission or filling vacancies or removing members. So shall, I think that's the wrong word.
Okay. So, bringing it back to the board, I will close the public comment and noting public comment we received. I also echo Susan's comments. In general, I do generally support, rather than writing the same thing in two separate documents, but I also think Susan's point's well taken, is having the information out there available doesn't mean that people have to look at 5 different documents to get a complete picture of what's going on. So I think it's just going to be incumbent upon us to know that keep them consistent over time, which is just a task for this board and for our library director. I'll also note personally some sympathy to the second comment that Mr. Holloway made about the removal of members. However, I will also note that the way that section is constructed, it said any member who is absent from 3 meetings and who fails to provide an excuse that's determined by the member's appointing jurisdiction to be reasonable shall be removed. So frankly, I think that the flexibility is built in there as long as there's a reasonable excuse that's as determined by the appointing body. So the shall is not simply a trigger when you miss 3 meetings. It is 3 meetings plus no reason for missing the 3 meetings that the board determines. The board, and in this case, I mean the city councils or the board of supervisors, determines to be reasonable. So I do think that that flexibility is built into that removal of member section. All right, is there any other?
Just one more question. Did the commission approve these as presented?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that takes us to the last item on today's agenda, which is the matter of our budget for next fiscal year. It looks like we've got a lot of information here, so I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
All right, I will begin with the staff report that was in the packet, and I'll just make very quick reference to some of the changes that were made, the increase in PERS and healthcare costs, the increase in hardware and software maintenance, the adjusted interest, and I can just briefly talk about the Polaris section, which is one-time cost. It is still, as I sit here, not been resolved. Basically, what happened is, not in this fiscal year, but the fiscal year prior, Polaris is the vendor that operates our integrated library system, allows us to check out books, check in books, all of that. That's what that does. And when we joined the Polaris, we contracted with Polaris. It was right at a time when they were bought out by another vendor. And at that time, I guess paperwork got lost. We had budgeted and were obligated for certain costs. They did not invoice us. They didn't invoice us for that whole budget year. Now they've come back and presented invoices, but they can't tell us exactly what they're invoicing us for, so we've asked for detail. And Kira has looked at those numbers, and the number that they're asking us for is not the number we're coming up with. So it's still in conflict, so we have put the larger number here, $47,000. We don't know what it's going to be, and it is not yet resolved, is it, Kira? So that's what that's about. Now, in the larger picture, there have been many, there's been the staff report and the supplemental report that happened after this initial staff report was written, and I want to turn it over to Marcus, who prepared the supplemental report to talk about the larger issues in the budget. Thank you, Marcus.
So included as a supplement to the budget packet is a 16-page staff report, of which some of it's repeated content, copies of reserve policies, surplus policies, and the supporting resolutions, and some new content. The first 4 pages provide us a narrative of some of the big talking points. Getting to the point, the staff's proposed adopted budget for the annual year 16-17, as amended, would end with the operating surplus of about $18,000, so essentially balanced. The long-term prognosis, there are concerns in the long term with 2 things. One, the amendments to the JPA and LFA agreements, specifically the LFA agreements, Library Financing Authority, capitates one of the revenue streams, the maintenance of effort and county library fund contributions that comes to this system, this board. It leaves sales tax as this board's revenue base that can count on for growth and expansion of programs. Sales tax inherently is a shrinking base. Cash flow in this region is positive, but a shrinking base, more transactions are falling out of the taxable system, mixed with the probability of a looming possible, using all these spin words, cautionary words, slowdown in the economy in the next couple of years. That would have a big impact on sales tax, consumer spending quickly is responsive. Getting to the point, the revenue base is vulnerable, the sales tax base is vulnerable, the system is heavily dependent on the sales tax base for growth. Long-term projections would have us going into a negative trend if the current costs included in the base operations are rolled forward, current operating costs, current personnel complements, factoring in the trends that are likely on healthcare, factoring in the trends that are already projected on CalPERS pension rates. It would put the system in an operational deficit position when we look long term. So there are concerns there about adding currently. And I think there was some comment about having a board study session. I would certainly recommend that and think that would be a wise move. That's big picture concept. Getting down to the action in front of you, staff has prepared a comprehensive budget for the next fiscal year that would end with a surplus of about $18,000. There was consideration and discussion about, for a lot of different contingencies, a new library director coming on board, next Tuesday's ballot election results, to authorize 4 months of spending as a proposal into next year and return to this board within a 3 or 4 month period with a new amended fiscal year 16-17 budget. Included in the summary of the staff report there's a listing of different options, and that sounds like one of the recommended options, the highly interested recommended options. The supplement to this supplemental report, pages 15 and 16, show the fiscal year 16-17 reproduced annual budget with the new column that shows what we would need for recommended budget authority if we were to authorize the first 4 months of the year and include annual authorization for certain components of our library's base related to contracts that are annual contracts that would need full authority to maintain those contracts as entered into, as well as the likelihood of some typically spending patterns where in the beginning of the fiscal year there are larger purchases that happen at the beginning of the fiscal year versus the end of the fiscal year, books and materials by way of example. So staff is, if there is a 4-month authorized discussion, staff has also included estimates for increasing the 4 months plus some additional line items that adds about $1.1 million to the 4-month scenario, just to make sure there's enough budget authority to get through the first 4 months, allow typical spending and purchase decisions to happen, and provide the authority for the contracts that are entered into. I can go in a lot more detail. There's schedules regarding the April 2016 dashboard report. There's a schedule that was prepared as a supplemental information to the Library Advisory Committee on projected operations for this remainder of this fiscal year. I'd be happy to go into more detail on any of those, depending on where the board wants to have a conversation and more focused discussion.
Okay, are there questions on the budget presentation?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Marcus, I had thought about a possibility of a study session too, because as a new board, I think it would be really great for us to know more about what's in here and what the base budget means to the system as a whole. Could you talk a little bit more about what you think might be possible to do in such a study session? I mean,
by way of example, I mean, just in about 2013, the board held a Saturday study session on a lot of things, and there was about a 2-hour focus on budget. And in that, we drove down into operation decisions. We drove down staffing levels and the trends that we saw at that point in time. So something that's that same order of magnitude is probably worthy. It's probably worthy to drill down into the long-term trends and what's behind it with regards to healthcare, pension, sales tax estimates rolling forward, the likelihood of the indicators pointing to a likely slowdown in the economy. That's a national focus, but I think when you're a largely consumer-driven revenue measure, meaning this board is counting on sales tax growth, we should talk a little bit about all those assumptions that back that with regard to shrinking sales tax base, some legislative attempts to expand the taxable range. That's just me thinking off the cuff, and I appreciate your suggestion. I think it's a nice one. I'm not necessarily recommending a Saturday, but be happy to.
You like your Saturdays too, huh?
My daughters are getting close to leaving the house, so after as many of those weekends as possible.
All right, are there other board member questions? I had two, I think. One is, can you give me a super plain language explanation of our reserve policy? Because I got it here, and I think I understand it, but just like a 3-sentence explanation.
The board has a minimum 2-month operating reserve requirement. Anything above that is available for appropriations.
That's it.
In there.
Okay, so 16.6%.
Yes.
Got it.
And
then
you do it on the basis of the budget, whatever is projected for that
Yes.
Yeah.
fiscal period.
Okay, thank you. That's what I got. It took me a little churning to get there, but
Yeah.
I'll make sure my
I understand by policy, every year when you do the projected budget, you automatically, that's one of the items that gets adjusted.
Correct.
Just like,
By
salary
formula.
increases or other obligations, it's part of the approach.
And I think as part of the study session, we want to revisit some of those principles that went into that 2013 recommendation, because the dynamics of change might put more risk into the system. We might want to consider more aggressive policy, perhaps, would be my preliminary recommendation.
Okay. Second question, I guess, is this is presented here, but it's looking like what you're projecting our cash position at the end of the fiscal year would be about $600,000, and then you go through and itemize sort of some one-time costs that we, at this point, likely, or it may be incurring.
Could you give us a page?
At the very back page of the supplemental report.
Page 16. Very last.
That's a
Look at the tabular.
4-month budget one, right?
Yes, yes.
And included in that are known costs. So if you have, like, so we are having an election
Right.
Tuesday. There's an estimate of $350,000 peg. So just when we start with 600,000, it's actually
Right, it's not.
that 250 after what may be election costs.
And wasn't the range on the election between 350 and 4, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, the estimate came from the county office of elections, and essentially they said it's $2 to $4 per voter. And so that's a sort of a broad range. In the past, we've used, by past, in other elections for similar, we've used $350,000 for election costs.
So basically, without the recabling project, we're effectively, leaving that out, just so I understand completely, and with the AT&T bill, which we may or may not, sort of beyond this board's control, whether or not we're going to need to pay that. Without the recabling project, we would end the year with $50,000 to the positive. This is that, or $100,000 to the positive in fund balance. That sound about right?
I would distinguish that last word, fund balance. So you have a larger fund balance that's above your reserve.
Above the reserve.
So the reserve plus $150,000.
The undesignated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Reserve.
Okay. And then we also have, obviously, the material that was submitted for the LFFA about potential reimbursement should Measure S pass. So I guess we would be looking at talking about a reimbursement there of $227 plus the election cost. Okay, a lot of unknowns.
So, and the amount above the reserve requirement is how much?
About 100,000. Projected. So assuming the election cost and assuming recabling.
And the Polaris invoice. Yeah. Okay.
In recabling, meaning the AT&T?
I misspoke.
No.
AT&T plus Polaris, not
No,
recabling.
the AT&T is the tariff that we have.
Yeah, so AT&T plus Polaris,
Yes.
plus the election costs,
For $100,000.
the amount above the required fund balance, the required reserves contribution is $100,000 about.
And if Measure S passes, there's potentially 575, or we'll have a discussion about how much of that could come back in.
Right.
And we are first on the list with Scenic. They're actually to start their site visits next week, so we're very hopeful that we're not going to pay anywhere near that $106,000 that we don't know.
Okay.
Can I speak to that just quickly? Because I think it's important that you guys understand that, sorry. Lynn Spencer, IT manager. I just want to say about Scenic, we're doing the site visits on Monday and Tuesday. There's still a question mark as to will there be sunk costs to do this. So our agreement with Scenic is that if it costs us a penny to trench, to permit, to do any of that, we are able to back out of our agreement with them. So I just want to put it out there that until I do these site visits on Monday and Tuesday with these people, and we know specifically exactly what it's going to take to bring fiber to each of those branches, there's still a question mark as to whether or not the board will want to move forward if there's any additional costs. So I have assurances verbally, but I don't have anything in writing from Comcast. So in addition to that, there's permitting, as Susan rightly brought up the last time. If there needs to be a trench dug in Boulder Creek or at Live Oak or any of those places, we will have to permit for that. So, I just want the board to be fully aware that it's like nailing down Jell-O. We just don't know what's going to happen until, we get final confirmation from the vendor that's providing the service. So that's I just wanted to put that out there. And then again, our back pocket play would be to stay with AT&T and just renew to a new contract, which is fully E-ratable. We will go fast in between the branches at that point, but they cannot give us a 10 gig connection to the internet.
And the cost for that is $106,000.
No. The cost is just the tariffs if we go out of contract with
Okay,
AT&T.
so if we stay in contract with AT&T.
Well, we actually have to have a new contract because the metro network we're on now is no longer supported by them.
Right, so how much is a new contract if we stay?
Oh, it's negligible. I mean, it's pretty much what we pay for now.
So we could, for the sake of budgeting, it's no
we could hold
additional
steady,
cost.
yes. We could hold steady if we decide that the sunk costs are too great, if there are any, to move to scenic. It gives us the ability to get out of that agreement, and then the back pocket play would be to just renew on a new contract with AT&T, which are similar dollar amounts as we're used to now.
I guess, for clarification's sake, when we first received the scenic presentation, my understanding was that there was an ongoing savings over the AT&T contract and better speeds. Now, I understand we may have some sunk costs at the front end to get ourselves there, but my understanding was that in the longer term, say 3 years from now, it was like $140,000 less each year, plus better speed.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the value.
The value to be all in with scenic is on the long-term play. Okay.
And the AT&T agreement, could we enter into an agreement for a shorter duration than?
Yes, we can do a month-to-month. However, it's from an engineering perspective, from a purely IT perspective, we would have to cut all of our existing customer premise equipment that we have with these current AT&T network. We'd have to redo everything and move it to that ASC network if we went on a month-to-month basis. But then we'd have to cut back over to scenic. So it just doesn't make sense from an engineering perspective. The haul to do that is very big for a 6-person department. To re-engineer an entire network for a month-to-month contract that might last 2 months, and then re-engineer the network completely again to move to scenic. Does that answer your question?
I'm a little confused, Lynn. So
Okay.
you told me that, or what I understood you to say was that if we stayed with AT&T, that the cost would be?
Yeah, we can stay with AT&T and we would get a month-to-month tariff because we're out of contract. Our contract ends on 7/31.
Right, and then I said, well, if we didn't want to pay the tariff, which I know
Yes.
the $106,000 is related to the tariff,
Right.
so if we don't want to do that, we just want to do another year with AT&T or something shorter than a year, maybe 6 months or something like that. You had said for the purposes of budgeting, we could stay equal.
Yes, but we'd have to enter into a new contract with AT&T, which means and a different network.
I
So-
understand that. So is it still zero on the budget side? Or is it,
yeah,
you
it's-
have to
it's-
cut things and then put them back together again and it might not be worth it?
On the budget side, it's zero for our costs of what it would cost to switch over, except for pain and sorrow. Time and, there's no treasure, it's blood. It's strictly an engineering problem. If we wanted to go with scenic, at some point we would have to switch all of the network back over. We can do a month-to-month.
Well, that we're going to have to do anyway.
It's just a timing.
That's an element of the scenic feature is that
Yes.
you're going to have to change it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of timing. So right now we're on a CSME network on a contract that expires on 7/31. We go month to month after 7/31 with these tariff prices.
Got that.
If we decide that we want to go with a new contract with AT&T, that means we have to switch to a new network. So while there are no sunk costs for us related to that switch, it would be very disruptive to the system because it'd be like recreating our whole network. So there's that piece of it. If Scenic came in September and we could go live with Scenic in September, we'd be redoing our network twice.
And so your recommendation would be to be paid out of tariff for 3 months?
Yes.
Okay. What happens if we get out of line with Scenic? Does that push us potentially?
Yes. And so that's why Monday and Tuesday are pivotal days, because we will know the engineers are coming to look at the physical buildings and the minimum point of entries. And I will know from following them around all day on Monday and Tuesday whether or not there are going to be significant delays or significant sunk costs to get Scenic to go live.
Okay.
So one thought I had when I was going through this material, and I know you've had some time to talk to the folks over at the county IT department, is that maybe we need some additional technical support, to make this decision. I mean, it sounds like there are at least 3 options. There's probably more than that.
Well, I feel like I'm fully qualified to make this decision.
No,
to
I'm not
advise the
talking-
board on this.
I'm just talking about soliciting input of other technical people to get different technical solution perspectives, just to get the breadth of the ideas across the board, because again, I know our people were very concerned that we were putting 10 gigs at each.
We're not putting 10 gigs at each branch. Each branch is 1 gig. Your people were concerned with the cabling, Cat 6 versus Cat 5e. So that's why I included that in my report this month.
Let's go to public comment, and then we can bring it back for board discussion. I want to give the public the opportunity to provide feedback, unless there's any clarifying questions.
Well, and if I could just speak to my own qualifications about having...
I'm not questioning.
Okay, I just, I have a master's in this. I've been doing this for 23 years. It's not my first rodeo.
This isn't about that. It's about soliciting technical support for people who might have differing ideas about how to solve the problem. There's always 100
so the vision I'm following is just the vision that we have as a library. So that's why Scenic even became a topic, because my director, Teresa, and my interim director wanted to be on Scenic, so that's why I pursued it.
Check, I understand.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate that, thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment on the proposed agenda that we have this morning? Sean?
Thanks. Just want to be clear, I'm speaking for myself. I had a question about the fund balance policy, Director Marcus. So you had said that the fund, you had given a fairly simple explanation about the fund balance policy, but can you explain the placeholders and the kind of synchronization and steps of what the excess surplus can be used for? How that kind of intersects with our reserves?
Yes.
I'm unclear on that.
So Sean, usually we don't sort of do Q&A.
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Let me make a statement then. I am confused about that.
Okay. And we will seek to clarify that when you continue to public comment. Thank you, Sean.
I am also not totally clear on the repayment in terms of the special election costs. I would like the board to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Is there any other public? Okay, maybe let's actually answer both of those questions. Marcus, do you think you could get us a summary of
So
those?
there's 2 separate policies. One is on reserves. That's where you start. There's a minimum reserve requirement, 2 months reserve, currently valued about $1,460,000. So that's cash that's set aside for unanticipated, unknown events, but also help if there enters into a down cycle. You can, slowly have time to prepare for a new organization. On top of that, there's a separate policy regarding surpluses. It defines and gives guidance for how surpluses can and cannot be used. Typically, surpluses can often be one-time in nature, or it can be just ongoing, hey, we're on a roll, we're going to have 5 years of surpluses. So it kind of distinguishes between those in 2 different categories. If you're in a cycle where you're having one-off surpluses, it's really recommending to use that for one-time purposes. If you're in a cycle long-term that looks like, hey, we're going to have ongoing surpluses, then allows the board guidance to use that for other purposes to support ongoing operations. Delving a little bit deeper, the current surplus policy is really focused on using 1/3 of a surplus. And then there's an expectation that the board would have a subsequent conversation about the other 2/3 with an intent of focusing the other 2/3 of a surplus towards increasing materials budget or facility needs.
Okay.
Did I answer it too deeply?
No, I think you did. Great job. And to be clear, we're not closing this last fiscal year with a surplus, right? So therefore, the second half of the surplus policy doesn't necessarily apply to this year's budget. I think that's That was kind of after I totally digested it and got all the way to the bottom. I mean, not that it doesn't apply, it's just we're not dealing with the surplus situation and dealing with this 1/3, 2/3 allocation process.
I said yes too quick. I'm usually yes, I agree. The projection for this year would put the library in surplus by the end of fiscal year 16.
Okay.
So just from a net, how much revenue and how much cost has gone out the door, we should be in net position.
That's 18.
The 12.
Well,
12,000.
what are you pointing to at the 12?
The last
The
page.
last page.
I think I was looking at the...
Yeah, next year is 18.
That's budget. So if you look to, in our packet is the April, page 14, the month of April's dashboard report. Year to date, we're 739,000 to the good. We've received 739,000 more than we paid out year to date. So actuals, we may end up in a surplus position, which would then grant the board authority to use a portion of that surplus for one-time purposes.
Okay, but we won't know that until...
The audit's closed, which is about November, December.
Okay.
But we'll have a good idea in the next 2 months, a really good idea.
Okay, so maybe 4 months out would be in a great position to know what that surplus is.
That's this fiscal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sorry, 18 was projected for next fiscal.
Yeah, the long-term perspective is surpluses are going to start vanishing and going into deficits. And we've had a year, 2 years ago we had surplus, 15, no, 16 looks like a surplus.
Okay.
So the other complication about the current year is that the estimated expenditures at this point do not include the reimbursements to the city because those have not yet occurred and we don't have that agreement. Until we do, we're not going to know how much that is. So that's another...
Well, that is baked in.
Well, you put in a number.
Yeah.
You put in 669 in the budget, and you don't have anything in the dashboard, I don't think.
No,
We
it's
haven't-
baked in as a placeholder. There's about, I think, $55,000 a month since January as a placeholder. Again, not saying that that's the amount.
So
it's a
you
placeholder.
didn't put it as an expenditure, though?
It is. It's an expenditure and a payable currently.
Well, we haven't approved anything, so why are you putting it as an expenditure? It should be something that you
It's a
adjust after we
contingency.
approve it. Is it in contingencies?
It's booked as a contingent expenditure and a contingent payable with an expectation that there will be an agreement, not...
So how would I know
specifying the
that
amount.
from looking at these documents that you gave us? How would I know that you've already booked a number that we haven't approved in your expenditures?
Page 14 and 16, footnote 6, talks about $55,000 will be recorded each month as an expenditure and a contingent accounts payable until a final agreement is in place with regard to the financial services.
Yeah, it says will be recorded each month, but it doesn't say that you did it already.
That very first line shows that we already have booked $55,000 per month
Okay. so-
placeholder, and then it goes on to say we will continue
Okay, I
that.
assumed you meant that that was a contingent liability for the future. I didn't realize that you were saying you already booked it.
The indications, I think, are likely that we will have an agreement. The uncertainty is the value of that agreement.
Okay,
And so we put a number in there.
well then it doesn't make it worse.
It doesn't make sense.
And, to supplement this actual schedule, we have the projection schedule that was given May 20th on page 7, that then talks about what we're thinking for the remainder of the year.
So if I wanted to know what we actually expended in these months based on what you actually paid out of the books, not counting any contingent expenditures that I may have
Yeah.
misunderstood, I would take $55,000 out of these numbers.
$220,000 out.
Would I take anything else? Is there anything else in here that we haven't approved that?
No.
No. Okay, so it's 55 a month since January.
Okay. The second question, Mr. Hill, do you think you could talk to us a little bit about the potential reimbursement should Measure S pass?
Certainly. The documents that impact the reimbursement for Measure S are primarily the agreement and the amendment to the agreement for the JPA, and as well as certain, as well as the ballot measure and language that's been adopted through resolutions and so on to develop the ballot measure. which is not just the language of the ballot, but the whole broad spectrum of the resolutions adopted. In those documents, the board is allowed to reimburse for administrative costs. And how those administrative costs are defined is up to the board. Certainly the cost of election would qualify for administrative costs. Costs from 2008 to help develop this bond measure, which has been in the thinking, I think, for quite some time, probably not. Okay, so within that discretion, those administrative costs can be reimbursed to the library and then used for whatever discretionary services the library would like to use those revenues.
Okay, so to summarize, we passed a resolution as a board basically saying we were going to be incurring costs associated with an election, and that if the measure passes, there's a potential reimbursement for those costs, administrative costs. We haven't defined which ones. You highlighted for us $277,000 that's been spent since most recent fiscal years. Plus $350,000 in estimated election costs. So hypothetically, we could seek reimbursement from the bond proceeds of about $577,000, obviously subject to approval by the entire board. Or it could be potentially a different amount if the election cost was higher, or we chose to draw the line on reimbursement for maybe some of the prior polling a little bit later in time. So I think hopefully that makes that clear for everybody. So that basically the ceiling is probably $577 unless the election cost is higher.
Well, I would suggest that you look to the budget amendment that the board approved. I don't know, I think it was in April, where you approved a $584,000 budget amendment for the LFFA. I think all those costs could come under or consideration for reimbursement, as well as the costs not included in that budget amendment, which includes some of the contract costs identified in the handout, but not all of the contract costs in the handout. There are some contract costs in the handout that occurred prior to this fiscal year that you could add to that. So if you're looking for an approximate number for total reimbursements, it's probably around $600,000 or so.
Okay. Okay, and obviously if the measure passes.
So we're talking 577 or 600, is that what he's saying, another 30 grand?
Yeah.
Yeah, or so.
Yeah, and then pending the cost of the election. And then we'll have to, if we do that, we'll have to convene as a board and take a look at it and figure out which cost we think. So I think that is potentially $600,000 ballpark coming back. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 650.
Those are direct costs. Understand that your agreement also included an item for in-kind costs if your board would like to go there.
Okay. Is there additional public comment? Go ahead.
I'm really discouraged at the 8% materials budget. And what occurs to me is even if the city of Santa Cruz accelerated their maintenance of effort by 4 years, that would be another $280,000. And even if that was entirely devoted to materials, that still just gets it up to about 10%. So I'm discouraged looking at the future. And the second thing is open hours. When the community is spending $67 million on new facilities, I just think it's a shame to have many of them not even open 40 hours a week. And I don't know, it's a chronic systemic problem. I'm not sure how to solve that one, but it's a serious problem.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, close the public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. Anyone wish to speak?
Well, I did have almost a question on the 8% factor against revenues for your materials budget, and I had asked Marcus about it. It sounded like this is standing board policy, but maybe it's one of the things you should consider in the study session should you have it, which is a good idea, because if the trending estimate that Marcus gave us in the future is real, materials budget's going to drop along with the drop in revenues. It seems to me you should establish a budget amount of those materials budget based on the reflective needs that the library system needs as a fixed amount like you do all the other line items, like we all probably do. I don't have any, I guess, our budget's based on revenues that are needed, materials and supplies, so maybe we should consider that in the study session because it's declining substantially, revenues decline substantially. You're going to drop from, if you even look at the 15, 16 amount, that amount that's budgeted is probably based on a number from previous year revenue estimate that doesn't really tie to the 8%, so probably already over the budget amount of 8%. So if you have a study session, you should probably look at it.
So the other thing we have to look at is that with all, assuming we are successful with Measure S, we're going to have expanded facility needs. For example, consider Belgium or Capitola just as an illustration, not intending to exclude all the others, but there will be an impact. You're just not going to deal with the same staffing levels as we have in the little modular buildings in Capitola. It's not going to work. So we've got to put that on the schedule for whatever year it's going to hit and understand how are we going to get from here to there and develop a plan not only that accommodates all the changes in the economy that Marcus and Chuck are talking about, but all the operational changes that are going to be inherent in the passage of the measure.
Right. And that could extend a number of years.
And that could extend. And again, I'm not one who likes to do a budget 10 years in advance. I think that is oftentimes, exceedingly difficult to do, and you basically get bigger than those kind of estimates only. But it gives you a little placeholder, so you kind of say, well, maybe it's this complement of resource, small, medium, and large, and then you kind of can begin to understand your future a little better. I gotta say, I feel very ill-equipped on this budget. I mean, we do budgets at the county all the time. I go through departmental budgets all the time. The amount of information that I have on this budget in comparison to what I normally see is much, much less. And this has got some additional complications in it that some of our departmental operations are pretty much straightforward as compared to this. This is more complicated. So I think a study session would really be a great idea. It would give us a chance to understand where all the money is in this operating budget and begin to make priorities, because I think, as Jamie pointed out about the materials budget and I pointed out about the open hours, those are our stated priorities. Now, again, none of us are going to want to develop a budget where we're operating at a deficit or we don't have an ability to sustain it over time. That would be dumb. So none of us would want to do that, but we got to look at our highest priorities and figure out, is there a way to get to some of those things with the resources that we anticipate are available or will be available in the future. So I love the idea of a study session. It would make me feel much more comfortable, and I would hope that the members of the commission would come to that study session, and we could kind of have it as like a working session, just a round table, maybe not make decisions at the first meeting, and just kind of go through the good, the bad, and the ugly about what we're doing and what the challenges are, and then begin to try to figure out how do we get there from here. We also have our new director coming on board. It would be, I think, a wonderful opportunity to educate her about some of our challenges and wishes and desires and get her input about what might be possible. I mean, this goes to the question I was asking about Lynn. It's certainly not intended to be anything negative about anybody. It's intended to just say, wait, there's a million ways to build, a building. The question is just which one do you want to pick, and you want to get as many smart people in a room as you can, because we're all advantaged by understanding the breadth of opportunities and not having to rely on just one person's expertise. I mean, I have a great knowledge of the budget, so therefore I'm going to decide the whole thing. No, that's not how it works. We all work together and we come up with a better product as a result of that. So I like that idea. And if we could do something as a placeholder in the meantime, I would be willing to support something like that. There were a couple of suggestions that the staff made in the staff report. One is to come up with essentially a status quo, option with nothing new. And then another was to do something over a shorter period of time. My inclination would be to do nothing new and come up with a shorter period of time, merge those two ideas together. They're option 2 and 3 on page 3 of our material that Marcus handed out, maybe something like that would allow us, to move forward. And I'm not sure about all these add-ons, but, we could go through those one at a time. But if we took nothing new, we're not exacerbating the problem, and we could get the input of the director and then, wait a quarter or a third of the year and take some time to do this. I would hope that we wouldn't take a long time, and because these decisions they're going to be complicated, they're going to take a lot of effort. So I would suggest that we start right away. I wouldn't want to wait until September, let's do it then. No, I think we should start right away. The county's dark in July. That's usually when we all try to get a little bit of respite from the year's events, and I know the city of Santa Cruz generally goes dark in August, so I know there's challenges.
July now, so.
You go July now too? Oh, good. All right, well then maybe we could do something like right now and then do something when we all get back in July, or anyway, those are my initial thoughts. I don't know how many staff we have. I don't know how many librarians there are, and I don't know how we use extra help. I hear from our union representatives about, they're not happy about the use of extra help. I don't know anything about that. I know they're not happy, and I know we use it. That's about the extent of my knowledge. So I would love to be able to understand those issues a little bit more.
If I can speak to the staff would be very interested in this kind of in-depth study session. There's a lot we want to tell you and describe what we do so that other people can take a look at it. We have the new director coming. We've got the Citizen Advisory Commission. I think the timing is perfect. There's several of us who be careful what you ask for. We have lots to tell you, and we would welcome the opportunity to do that. So I think the library staff would be in favor of this kind of considered plan. If I can just really quickly on the matter of collections, I did talk our division manager of collections couldn't be here today, but I did talk to her about this before the meeting, and it's something we kind of all know. We're in this sort of interesting position right now where we're going to get ready to renovate some branches. We're going to have a different amount of shelving soon, or we're going to be doing materials in a different way. It's actually, right at this moment, not a bad thing that the materials budget is not going up. This is actually a good time for it to be kind of stable like this, because we're going to bring all these new branches on with all their new resources, and we don't know what those are going to be. We don't know how we should necessarily plan for that, and they're going to come in cycles, so we're going to be able to see what the pattern is and see what we're going to do. So I appreciate, as a librarian, of course, I appreciate that you're concerned about that number, but this is actually working to our advantage at this moment. Right now, if our budget for collections went up too much, we actually wouldn't have places to put things. So this is, in the short term, it's not a bad thing. But what you're suggesting allows us to really look at this long term.
And Janice, you were saying that you don't buy books in bulk at the beginning of the year. You buy them
we have
throughout the year.
subscriptions and certain things that we buy at the beginning of the year that is a sizable amount of money, to be sure, and then we buy materials throughout the year.
Throughout the year. Okay, well that allows us to then ramp up when the time comes,
Yes.
whenever that might be.
Yeah, and we have experience in preparing opening day collections.
Well, again, I mean, for me, a study session, and I'm sure there would be lots of things that I would come up to that I didn't think of right off the top of my head, but, I'd want to understand what the staffing levels are. I'd want to understand what they are at each branch. I'd want to understand what programs run at each branch. I don't need to know them in infinitesimal detail like we did those when we do the reviews here at the board meeting and we get an in-depth understanding. I think that would be more than what we would need for budget purposes, but little short understandings of what each one of those elements are would be very helpful. And then the cost by branch is something that I have asked for, and Marcus has told me that he can't provide because your current cost accounting system doesn't work that way. But I would hope that we could at least begin to understand, well, here's all the overhead costs or the non-allocated branch costs, and then here's everything else. And just so we could begin to start piecing together, the building blocks so that we understand how the budget is built, so we would get the staff costs broken out, we'd get the branch costs broken out, we'd get the functions broken out. This is how much we spend on bookmobile, this is how much we spend on, something else. We'd understand to a greater degree the extra help utilization. I would like to know a little bit more about what's in all the MOU costs. I know we have healthcare cost increases and PERS increases, but I'm not sure how much are ours, how much are theirs, what's our liability going forward. We have another 4 years or so on the general unit and 3 years on the management unit, so we want to understand that. We want to understand the benefit side of things, and then the services and supplies, the overhead, the revenue, all the variety of sources, and then these policies with regards to reserves and surpluses. And, at the moment, I feel like all the blocks are out there, and the question is, how do we build the skyscraper, And at this point, I feel like I'm beginning to get a handle on what the blocks are, but I don't really know how to put them together for a good plan that's going to be the state-of-the-art library that I know Janice wants to run, so.
Are there other board member comments?
Just real quickly, I agree that I think it would be helpful to have a study session, because I think, like you, I think all of us are in the same position of not really understanding or the details of how the library has operated traditionally. So I think it would be helpful. And also, I think by waiting a little bit, we'll have some information about some critical items too. So that makes sense. It'll be helpful in that regard. Then we can sort of then move forward. So I'm supportive of that. I think it's a good idea. The only other one really quick question I had was for Lynn, just really quickly, as far as the scenic project, do you have an overall sense of what sunk costs might, worst case scenario, what they might be? Or if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah, I really couldn't tell you because how they get fiber to the Boulder Creek branch is...
So it really is...
There are broadband maps in existence. There's actually a federal broadband map. However, there's a lot of dealings that go on between fiber companies where they resell parts of their fiber. Comcast may take 2 pair of AT&T's fiber, and I have no knowledge of that. So until we do those branch visits on Monday and Tuesday, I will know for sure what's going on.
Well, and we have, the county has contracts, the city and the county work together with Comcast, and to the extent that we have Comcast services up there, there are certain requirements that they have to provide fiber to public institutions. So I think if our IT people were involved, it would help them, help us to keep the costs to what they need to be.
The process.
Yeah.
And it gets up to scale. Get that later.
So, do you have any comments?
Well, I agree with everything that's said. I think they said they're great. I'm just concerned on timing, sooner the better. I mean, say dark, I think councils and boards are dark. We're still available, right?
Yeah.
July. And then Susan's kind of, I guess, mixed between the two budget alternatives. Probably makes some sense. Should be simple to do, or just have to come back and do it.
And I should underscore, only because I'm sensitive to Lynn's comments, this is not a criticism of the library system. I think the library system we have is terrific, and I think they work really hard to do the things that the library board has asked them to do over the course of time. I think it's about us, that we're the new ones, and we need to catch up, and we want to be responsible and effective in our roles. And so I think in order to do that, we have to be a little better informed than what we are. So again, I just don't want people to get the wrong idea. I think it's important.
Okay.
So if you're planning a study session sometime in June or July, is that what we're looking at? I'd be curious.
Yeah, let me offer at least my thoughts on this.
Okay.
I think that there's a huge number of unknowns that I think have been identified. I think we have whether or not Measure S passes, what the final contract with the city of Santa Cruz looks like. We're going to get more sales tax data here coming up on third week of this month, which, each time a sales tax number comes in, your long-range projections change. And so I think that sales tax number is going to come in. the actual amount of the, whether or not we need to use AT&T over the first 4 months or not. There's just a lot of unknowns. So I'm supportive of a 4-month budget. I think that makes a ton of sense for this board to kind of put in place a path, get us going, and then get the new director to come on board. I would really like to have our new director involved in the study session. She doesn't start until June 20th. So I guess my thought is turning around and scheduling a workshop like her second week.
She's going to a budget meeting her first day.
I guess my thought might be like waiting until some point in August to do this, to give her a chance to get her feet on the ground and provide us with some of her initial recommendations and thoughts, have a chance to work with Santa Cruz Finance. We get a chance to see some of these unknowns resolve themselves. So I guess I'm completely comfortable with the direction. I don't want to come back and do this sort of Groundhog Day 2 weeks from now, and we're kind of, Susan's still not here. We're still kind of wringing our hands. So I don't want to delay, but at the same time, I want to give information a chance to mature.
I completely understand that and can appreciate that, and think that's why I said I don't think we should even make any decisions. But I do think that we could get some information between now and then. I mean, for example, if we wanted to have the staff give us the staffing patterns and the, just some basic financial information, not asking for anybody to make any judgments about it, just to kind of, lay the land. Here's what it is. I think we can start that. That would be educational before we do any deciding what do we want to do now, which I think you're right. If we try to do it before August, we would be making a mistake. Okay. And when I said September, I just meant don't wait until September to start. I think we could start as soon as she gets here. I mean, again, I don't think we should inundate her, but I think if we gave her if we had a short study session on, what are all the programs, and then a short study session on what is the MOU, and a short study session on, what are the reserve policies, and I don't know what the topics are that people would feel would be appropriate. Maybe we do 2 or 3 of them together in an hour meeting, or maybe it takes 2 hours and, we do one. But, I think the staff could help us to organize something logical and begin to at least collect the information.
Things that we would like to talk about, and then you can give us feedback on what you want to talk
I think we could make the list of things, at least a rudimentary list. I kind of ticked off one already, but maybe there's other things we could just at least put on the list, and then figure out how to lump them together, and just have like informational sessions a little bit before we delve into trying to solve problems.
Okay.
Yeah, let me comment on what you said about the new director coming on board. Scott's probably has the city manager come on board July 18th, with probably best to have that person in these study sessions initially rather than someone like me.
And if there were informational items, I thought about that. And if there were informational items, we can create a little folder for her to say, here's the MOU packet you missed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get through all my comments on this. So a couple of things, though, is that I do feel pretty strongly about is I think that the scenic contract, I don't want to get off the scenic train. I think that bringing scenic to our libraries is an important thing. There's a long-term cost savings, better data speeds at a lower cost. And my concern is not moving forward with that, not giving the authorization for the AT&T month-to-month if necessary, would be a problem and potentially get us off that train and lead to this notion of, okay, now we need a new contract with AT&T July 1. We do a bunch of staff effort to do that. The new director comes on board and says, you're crazy not to do CNA, which everybody seems to be telling us. And so then we, as we heard Lynn talk about, completely rejigger the system again to get back on scenic, assuming we can get back on the train and get back in the schedule to do it. So I'm fully in support of doing that. I'd like to kind of hold off on sort of the recabling stuff within the branches, because I think that could be a part of the larger conversation. But I want to be clear that I'm 100% in support of moving forward with scenic. And if we need the AT&T month-to-month at the tariff rate, we've gotten the recommendation, and so be it. Hopefully we don't have to pay that. I also, in terms of the kind of rather than taking every number in the budget and dividing it by 3, if we were to do a 4-month budget, I think that some of the points Marcus made are well thought through. It would be silly not to prepay the PERS UAL. That's essentially probably, off the top of my head, I'm guessing it would be a $40,000, maybe $30,000 loss, essentially, just by not paying the PERS UAL early. And I'd be fully in support of doing that. So I like the idea of taking the budget, dividing by 3, or taking last year's, carrying it over, making sure that I have money available to continue with the scenic, and then taking into account the recommendations Marcus made about sort of the upfront costs in terms of the budget.
Can I ask Nicole to provide an update from the meeting that was had with the technology group on the scenic issue? Because I agree with you, as it's presented, it seems like, we save money and we have faster speeds and it's a good idea. Our IT people, I think, and again, I don't know, maybe there wasn't adequate communication, but my understanding was our IT people thought that there were some, costs associated with the approach that were not going to be advisable. So,
right. Let's get the presentation from Nicole, but I think the difference here is scenic a good idea, and is the recabling plan a good idea? And they're actually separate questions. And
okay,
I think
well then you'll have to help me separate them, because
okay.
my understanding is we don't get scenic without the cabling.
Some recable, yes, some recable. So you're going to do scenic, that's going to get the speeds to the front door. The question is what you do within each box. And I think there was some questions and I will defer to Nicole here in a second, some questions within county IT about how much do you do within each box to bring speed to each individual laptop. The notion of getting the speed to the front door at a lower cost, I don't think anybody has any question about, but I'll turn it over to Nicole and see if you can have them shedding more light on that.
So, our IT department was separating the two. I think they agree that the AT&T tariff rates, there's nothing we can do about that, and bringing scenic to the library is a separate issue from the cabling at the individual branches and what would need to be done at some of the individual branches.
So question, Nicole, are there 3 issues or 2?
There's 2 issues. There's the AT&T tariffs, and then there's the cabling at the branches, the rewiring.
Which is
so that's why Lynn
scenic.
has the 2 reports.
No. The cabling at the branches is not scenic.
No.
Scenic is to the door, as Jamie was
Yeah,
describing.
the cabling at the branches has to do with the upgrading the type of cabling, correct,
Yes.
Lynn? So we're upgrading from Cat 5E to Cat 6.
And I have some interesting numbers if you'd like to hear of that. It's
I really don't want to hear any more technical reports.
So they're the 2 issues, and I think
Getting busy.
Yeah, it's steady.
the issue that IT had with the cabling was whether or not, has to do with the speed that we need to get to the branches and the speed that the end devices need to be using.
Right.
So it's a separate issue.
Right. So I would reiterate my support for the scenic project. I think it's a great project. Like I said, it brings better speeds to the branches, to the system at a lower cost. I'm more than willing to defer the recabling decision to once we've had a chance to get through this 4-month period, talk to the new director, take into account some of the issues about, so what are you doing inside each box to bring the speed to each computer, and, do we have how that's done. But I think that the 106 is very 107 is important to make available if we need to continue to move forward with the scenic process. So I want to make the pitch for that.
So Jamie, I'm sorry, I still am not completely understanding if I've got this right. So I understand the cabling is separate, and I understand what we're putting in relation to each box is separate, and I understand the AT&T tariff issue. I guess what I don't understand is where scenic fits in. Scenic is the alternative to the AT&T option, is the way I'm looking at it. So either you're going to have a longer-term agreement with AT&T, which means you have to go through the engineering nightmare that she discussed, or we're going to have an agreement with scenic, which is going to be something different, which doesn't have a cost to it. It has a savings associated with it. So everybody likes the way that sounds. So it's free. So we for the sake of discussion, it's going to be something that's going to be less expensive. and it's not going to be reliant on some other cabling on from the door to the
I think
computers?
I believe that right now we could hook the Scenic up, you could plug it into the libraries, and you'd still have data status quo. You'd be underutilizing your Scenic network. So some upgrades would be warranted. The question is, and that's a separate question I think that we can address, is how much upgrade do we want to do over time to take advantage
So
of the
at
Scenic
this
network?
point, the Scenic network costs me nothing and saves me money in the long term, and
Brings better potential.
it gives better
Making it a
potential
more
for the
robust
future.
system.
And it's the alternative to the AT&T on the front end, but doesn't require us to do anything on the cabling.
Right.
Okay.
It just brings a bigger pipe, which AT&T couldn't provide.
Right.
I mean, Scenic is the only one that could provide
And
a
there's
big
just
pipe like that.
relationships to other organizations, institutions that AT&T would provide with Scenic.
And the only giddy up here is that, you know, we might need to spend 4 months at this stupid rate with AT&T, and we all hope that we don't. And so that's all I'm trying to push is,
Well, and I guess my question is, the engineering blood, sweat, and tears that Lynn talked about. I mean, if it's going to take us a little bit of time, maybe it's not going to take us as long as I'm envisioning, but if it's going to take us a little bit of time, is there a way to slice the baby in half with AT&T and take a 6-month extension? And
well, what about this? Lynn, at this point in time, if you had to, I know you put in a contingency for 4-month, month-to-month tariff rate
Right.
contract with AT&T. What would be your best guess of whether or not we need to use it and how many months? If so-
I will tell you on Tuesday.
Okay.
I will not know until their engineers come and look at the physical minimum point of entry for fiber.
so does Scenic get a 10 gigabyte connection to the La Selva branch?
No.
No.
So it's a hub and spoke. I know I don't want to get too technical, but
No, we did
each
this
branch
last
will
time.
have a gig, 1 gigabit, out to the central branch here, which is where all of the servers and the internet live. So with the current cabling, if we don't touch cabling in any of the branches, and within the branches, and we install Scenic, the fastest any connection will go on a wired PC is 1 gigabit to the internet. That is basically it. So that's why, as you think about building out your branches, if you increase your speed on the line, that is the data lines inside the box, then you have the potential to go faster out to the internet. So you cannot utilize the full potential of that 10 gig internet connection unless you rewire when you do your construction.
Got it.
And the county operates on 0.8 gigs. So 10 gigs sounds enormous to me and may not be warranted, necessary, cost-effective, or reasonable. But then again, it may, which is why I'm
And at
saying,
this point-
I'm not a technical person who would know the answer
But
to
the
that
nice thing about it
question.
is it's at a lower cost.
Yeah.
We're looking at 100.
Yeah.
We can talk about, the kinds of uses that the public expects of the library, and it's different and more extensive than you can imagine. That's part of it.
I think
That
you're
the
right.
demand on us is quite different.
And looking ahead, it's just getting bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just, that 10 gig future-proofs us for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check.
And as the branches get built out, if you decide to go with the faster wiring, which is only a 30% increase in amount that it costs to wire for the full potential versus the wire we have now.
So again, going back to Marcus's staff report, if we're going to have to provide the potential to pay AT&T, we're going to have to provide the potential to pay AT&T, but we don't have to put any money in the budget related to the costs associated with the contract with Scenic. We'll just keep working on it.
Right.
Because it's going to save us money.
Right. So at this point, I'm hearing like we have some consensus, talking about a 4-month budget, and then calling for sort of a schedule, kind of a work study sessions that would take place towards the end of the summer and then through the early fall to get to the point where we have a new director, we have more information, and we can adopt a full year's budget. Okay?
And I just had one really quick question too. Just want to make sure. So other than the, just for the staff, other than the the AT&T month to month, and you mentioned also the prepaying the coppers and obviously incorporating all the increases and the MOUs and all that. Is there anything else within this 4-month budget that we just need to make sure?
No, you have everything
That's it.
that's there.
It covers everything?
And I would say staff had proposed, and it sounds like it would probably be put on hold, some position enhancements.
And we can,
So
Yeah.
it's included in the budget authority, but the direction would be staff would hold off on that.
Well, okay, so I would like to see the budget we're adopting, and we don't have it before us, but I think we can get whatever we want in it. What I'm understanding is that we are not putting in anything new. We're taking all the new expenses out, with the exception of the prepayment of the PERS and the exception of the AT&T unfortunate nightmare.
And the contractual obligations.
And the contractual obligations for staff and all of those things go with, right, and we would have a budget that would have 4 months. What we have here is, I guess we have a 3-month.
4 months.
Do we have a 4-month?
Yeah, 4 months.
Okay, it says adopted 3 months.
Page 15 to 16, that was a previous conference, so page
Okay.
16 to 16 has a 4-month alternative.
4-month alternative.
Yeah, so we do have the 4-month alternative there, the last page of the packet.
So the total budget would be $5,656,216.
Well, okay, but we need to take out things that we haven't approved. Like, we haven't approved the financial services for the city of Santa Cruz, and we haven't approved the expenditures for the things on the bottom, those budgetary alternatives, right? Those are not in there.
Yeah, we're going to deal with those. We'll
But
deal
we're
with
going
those
to have to
separately.
include elections, presumably.
We're going to need to include elections, we're going to need to include 1, 3, and 4, I think we need to include.
The elections, so let me just clarify, the elections they're this current year's costs,
Oh, right.
not next year's.
Right.
And there should be sufficient budget capacity in this year's budget to afford elections. So I'm not recommending any budgetary action for the election costs. That schedule down below is to try to give order of magnitude if these decisions, the cash flow impact.
So,
We don't need to do 1, but 2 and 3.
No, we don't need to do 2, we need to do 3 and 4.
3 and 4.
Right, 3 and 4.
so the 4-month budget that's presented here, Marcus, Susan, would you be comfortable if, when we talk about the financial services outside city of Santa Cruz, if we just continue to book them as a contingent expenditure the same way that we are? So that, I don't know if it...
No, I don't think we should have them in our expenditures at this time. I think they should be a liability that we post as a liability, but at this point, we don't even know what they are. So why would put them in the expenditure column just to confuse me is beyond me, but, again, I know Marcus is trying to give full disclosure, so I appreciate that. But, I'd say, let's leave them out, and then we'll set up the appropriation when we have an agreement to, when are we gonna get the agreement? Not to answer that, so I'm done.
So, we're working on it.
We're working on it. Are we getting closer? It's been a long time.
It has been.
I think we should, probably have it on our board, our next board meeting.
July
That would be nice. That would be July.
28th meeting?
28th.
July 28th.
Okay.
Oh, that would be lovely.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll have it then we could add it to the regular budget then, Jamie, because that'll be consistent with the timing on
Right.
the...
I mean, there's a lot of information, like we were saying, that's going to come in. So I'm seeing on page 15 and 16, the 4-month budget that was distributed today from Marcus. And it sounds like the one line item that I hear some concern about is the financial services to the city of Santa Cruz, and how we're going to deal with that. Are there other items?
Is there anything else new in here?
What I see across the board is like janitorial supplies was $20,000 last year.
Yeah, it's
The full
going
budget
up.
22.5. I assume that's probably pursuant to a COLA factor that's in there, so the 750 is that number. So, when I see something new, I see like the vehicle cost went way down. That's because we bought the bookmobile last year, so in a sense it's new and it's zero, but it makes sense because we bought the bookmobile. So, I'm comfortable with this proposed 4-month and talking a little bit more about how we deal with the, I appreciate the fact that there's an estimate at least, and for the cost to the city of Santa Cruz, understanding that it isn't a real number. And maybe we want to treat it a little bit differently to acknowledge that it's not a.
Something hasn't been charged
Give you any money.
for 6 months.
Well, we're out for this year. We need to deal with this year soon. And presumably in July we would, and we're going to, you're going to roll forward the fund balance, right? You're not going to.
Sure.
So he's not going to expense it. He's going to roll it forward as available cash, and we're going to have to budget for it for next year.
Well, I think we probably want to accrue it back. I mean, just otherwise our financials would look pretty goofy.
Well, if we, go ahead.
Under a presumption, with the audit year will continue until October, so if we're done by then, it should be a 16 cost.
You could leave it back in this year.
Yeah, and that's where it lives, and that's where it should be. For January through June.
Yeah, it would be great if we could get it done that way. That would be terrific.
Easy to do.
So does it matter to you if we put it in or leave it out at this point?
No.
So
If I'm putting my library advisor hat on, leaving it out is no impact.
it has no impact.
We present it July 28th.
And we would present it both in terms of, for July 28th, you'll be able to tell us the actual expenditures as of June 30th, and then we would be plugging a number in for the city of Santa Cruz, assuming we have an agreement that we all think is good. Well, that to me makes infinite sense.
So our revised number would be $5,419,549.
And we'd be basically, as proposed, putting a zero effectively in that line for now,
Yeah, TBD.
and then including items 3 and 4, the budgetary alternatives.
So 5,656,216 minus the 236,
667,
and then plus
106,896,
and plus
45,600.
$5,572,045.
check.
Okay, and does the Polaris invoice really belong in next year's budget, or?
I'd have to coordinate with staff to understand that the sequencing and timing is probably a this year cost, but I don't have an intimate knowledge of what the issues are there, so
So it depends on
wouldn't
what
hurt.
if there's a lot.
Okay,
Wouldn't hurt to have it in there, then we're certainly going to amend the budget July 28th and subsequent.
okay, well, I guess we're just acknowledging that it's an invoice and staff needs to review it and make sure that there's the appropriate backup established.
Right, and it may turn out to be somewhat less than the
Yeah.
45 even. Okay, so at this point, there would be a line item appropriation for those two items added. Where would they be added? Under system services?
Typically, it comes out of IT, library IT.
Which is the first,
Software,
over here.
our software maintenance.
Yeah,
Okay. So the Polaris and the AT&T 106, and fingers crossed that we don't need the 106,
yeah.
show up there.
Deduction amount again, Susan. What was the first deduction from the 5656?
The 264.1.
Oh, that came out.
I'm sorry, 236,665, sorry.
630.
665.
Oh, that came out.
Okay.
I'm looking for that one. Okay. Now I got it.
So this would be the adoption of an annual budget, and it would only accommodate expenditures for the first 4 months. Because our JPA agreement says that we have an obligation to adopt an annual budget, so it's kind of an annual budget, but it's only for the first 4 months. And then we'll adjust it, hopefully before too long.
Okay. And then I can work with the library director and the new library director to set up a schedule for workshops. Is there consensus of the board that we would probably have our July 28th meeting and then maybe late August sort of target the first of the series of workshops? Is that?
I think that's too late. I think we should, late August, I think it's too late. I think we should start with informational sessions as early as we can stand it, whenever that may be. And I don't know if we, I mean, again, they're just informational at this point. We're not asking the librarian to, she's going to learn just like us, so we're not asking her to take some impossibility. So I would suggest we start working, and if we don't want to do it in July, which I would be willing to do early July or late July if we were going to do July, but not in the middle. But if we want to wait till August, that's probably not going to make that big of a difference one way or the other.
I think August is good, but early August would be preferable.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're dark that first meeting in August. So that was a
Are you
vacation
gone
time.
when? When are you gone, Jamie?
Oh,
I don't know. I know I'm back on the 25th. that was what I was just struggling with, because that's our
So
first
when,
council
but when
meeting.
are you here in July?
I'm around July. I'm around July 28th for a board meeting. I mean,
So-
maybe we just boost up the 28th meeting. Make
Yeah,
the
maybe
28th
we-
a super meeting.
Yeah,
Do
maybe.
it all day.
Well, we have a 911 meeting that starts at 1:30, but
Yeah, July 28th.
We might need 911.
so so that's an option. Is on the 28th. Is we just say it's 9 to 1 to 1, or we could do it up at 911 to 1:30, and that's our first workshop. I mean that actually makes a ton of sense, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to rebook the meeting that we have on the Library Finance Authority, which we actually have it as 9:30 for some reason that day.
I have it.
Do you have it as 9?
I have it 9.
Do we want to start at 9 or do we want to start at 8? I mean, are you guys, I'm open to chicken. Want to do 8 to 1? Is that, no, 8:30 to 1? Look at him, he's crying, he can't have enough coffee. All right, 9 to 1, and could we do it could you see if we could get it from,
The only thing is I know we adopted an annual meeting schedule, and I believe this is on it already.
Yeah, it is.
well, we would just be changing the location. Don't let people come.
So the big concern here would be complying with the rules of regular meeting. And I think I should run it by Scott.
Okay, then we can do it here. We'll just
Yeah.
have the meeting here.
Okay.
It's fine. I was just trying to accommodate Jamie's request to do it at 9:11.
I was just thinking that gets us in
Yeah.
a half hour.
Yeah, I can check with Scott and see. If I recall, the language is not time and place, but day and time of regular meeting.
Okay, so the day and time is not changing, and the question is, can we move it to that location? So why
Yeah.
don't we say this? We'll leave the day and time be the same. 9 o'clock is what you have? I have 9:30 for some
I have
reason.
9.
No, it is 9.
It is 9? Okay, so mine was
For the
just wrong.
LFFA meeting.
So we'll do it at 9 o'clock, and preferably do it at the De La Viegas site, which is a
If it-
great site for having a study
Yeah,
session.
if it's available. And
If it's available and we
Scott.
can, and if not, we'll do it here.
I will check with Scott.
Okay, and then can I articulate what the items are that we'll have in the study session at some point during the time? And then get every board member to put whatever they want, and maybe if anybody in the audience has suggestions. But I think we want the current year's actual expenditures and the projected year's expenditures. I think we want a breakdown of the staffing and the staffing costs. We want that by staff positions and branch and function. And we want to understand the use of extra help and how that plays, because there's probably, it's a little shy of $1 million in there for that. We could have a summary of the MOUs and what the MOUs specify for the different units so that we don't run afoul of those agreements. We would look at the benefits schedule for staffing, including the PERS and the healthcare costs. We would have all of those items you call supplies, equipment, system services, and at the county we call those things services and supplies. It's basically all the operating, expenditures broken out for us so we understand what's in them. Like there's a lot of, contract for this, contract for that, and I'm not sure what it all is. And then overhead, which we talked about, which is the city of Santa Cruz's contributions. A revenue estimate, which again, Marcus has given us a lot about that today. And then a reserves and policies affecting the budget, which again, Marcus gave us a lot of that today. What else? Nicole, did I miss something?
I have two others that I'd
Okay.
like to see would be kind of a breakdown of the materials budget. I mean, it's a big chunk of the budget and, you know, the split between digital and books and
Good.
how that works.
We can do that.
I'd also like a little bit of, I mean, probably relatively short and pretty wonky, but kind of the most recent actuary or CalPERS that reflects kind of the rate assumptions and what rates we'll be seeing. I know they change every year, but.
And keep in mind, it's blended with the city of Santa Cruz.
Yeah, no. Well, so basically, when you bring the MOU, I know it's in the City of Santa Cruz MOU, but just show us what the current CalPERS projected rates.
Right, just for miscellaneous employees in the city, because they're part of the
Yeah,
state
so I
system.
understand.
Right.
But that would be another piece for us to see in there, what the, of course, they change every year, but seeing where they are right now.
Maybe part of the materials discussion, you want to see if 8% is something you want to stick with, or just do a fixed budget?
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you like a more complete presentation of LFFA costs in terms of the development of the LFFA and future LFFA?
I think by that point, we'll know the election cost, I hope. And so
should.
maybe you could put together kind of a,
An update of this.
an update of this
Yes.
with everything.
Thank you.
Kind of,
Yeah.
with everything in your recommendation.
I will do that.
Okay, that would be helpful.
And you're able to be there on the 28th, Rich?
Yes, I have it scheduled, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And again, which ones we present on we're not going to have all these on the 28th and, so.
Good, because I thought we were at 4 o'clock already.
No.
11 o'clock.
Okay. We'll be right up. Did we mess up?
I don't know.
It's the
You
Genealogical
got 20
Society there on a regular basis here, but we're fine.
Okay.
We're fine.
Okay.
Okay. So that would be the direction for the workshop on the 28th, the extended meeting on the 28th.
And we would ask the librarian to work with Janice on figuring out which of these things we could have for that meeting, because we might not be able to get them all.
Yeah, and I'll be talking with her frequently so we can figure this out, and then I'll
Yeah,
have.
and in
work
some
with the
ways,
senior manager
whatever she
and
feels
do
she
it.
needs first, she should get first,
Yeah, that's-
Our needs should follow hers.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think I'd like Jamie's suggestion, if we can work with
Yeah,
Janice
yeah,
and Susan.
right. All I'm saying though is if Susan wants something before something else, I think we should let her have it.
Good. This is all doable.
Just get me in charge. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to ask for permission. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know that we need a motion on that, but I'd be happy to accept a motion on that piece first, if the board would so desire. Otherwise, I think that could just be direction to the board. Okay.
Second. So the motion is to approve the contents of the study sessions as outlined.
Yeah,
And have Jamie also work.
Chair will work with the director to agendize for the 28th as we can. We'll do our best to make it on the 911 if we can.
Okay.
Okay? Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Who was first? I'm sorry.
Martine.
Oh, thank you.
So then I would make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 16-17 operating budget as presented on page 16 of the materials that were handed out by Marcus with the
15 and 16.
15 and 16, thank you, with the following additions or changes. Revising the financial services outside City of Santa Cruz number to 0 for the current time, and adding an amount of $106,896 to the information technology section of the budget, and adding the outstanding Polaris's invoices at $45,600 to the appropriate location, with the understanding that that number is subject to change based on the staff's review.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Wow.
All right. With that, I don't have my agenda in front of me anymore, but I believe we are adjourned.
Thanks.
See you all on the 28th.